It's Talk of Iowa from IPR News, and today is Horticulture Day. I'm Caitlin Troutman, in today for Charity Nebbe. Iowa weather has been predictably unpredictable, and our tree friends are feeling it. But how can we help storm-damaged trees? Jeff Iles is here. He is a professor of horticulture at Iowa State University, and he has advice on helping trees with storm damage and advice on preventing that damage before the next storm comes around. Hello, Jeff.
Caitlin, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very good. Good to be here.
We're going to talk about preventing damage, and prevention is always preferred, annoyingly, of course. But let's start with assessing damage. We could say we're triaging. What signs of distress are we looking for?
Well, we've had weather this spring, and that goes with the territory. But after any major windstorm, I go out and look at my trees. I look for broken branches, and those are pretty easy to identify, especially as the leaves go from green to brown. Then they really stand out in the tree canopy. But I think it's always good to go out and do a quick walk around, because those branches will eventually fall out of the tree, and you don't want them falling on your head. And it's a plant health issue as well. So I just make it a habit to look around the neighborhood, because there's always some larger trees in the neighborhood that might draw your attention too. But yeah, assessment's important. And then, of course, it's important then to draw upon the expertise of people that do this kind of thing for a living, that is, prune trees. Because some of these limbs are heavy. They might not look heavy when they're up in the canopy, but safety first. And so whenever there's a branch to be removed up in the canopy, leave it to the professionals who know what they're doing.
Absolutely. And obviously, it bears repeating, though, if it's near an electrical line, leave it to the professionals. Don't be a hero, right?
Right. Don't get on ladders.
Yes, yeah. Above shoulder height, I've heard, is a good rule of thumb. So
Yeah.
are we looking at the trunks, the bark, for damage as well?
Well, you might see some of that, but usually the damage from winds is going to be higher up in the canopy. And this is where we could talk about prevention, because a lot of younger trees, if they're not pruned properly when they're young, end up with structural flaws as they get older, and those are the places where trees fail. And so it's hard to talk about these things on radio. It's easier to show you a picture or do this in the field. But suffice it to say, young trees can't just be planted and then forgotten about. There is some structural pruning that needs to be done, and we want to favor those wide branch angles. We don't want multiple leaders in the stem, and so these are basic things that you can do early on in the tree's life to prevent catastrophe later on.
All right, so let's just review those proper pruning techniques. You talk about your rules of engagement for pruning. What are the most important things to remember?
Well, on a young tree, if we're going to prune, we do it at the right time of the year. Now, let's keep in mind, because I know Mark Vitosh is out there lurking somewhere, we never prune oaks during the growing season. We only prune oaks when they're dormant. And I think dormant season pruning is good for a lot of plants, because you can see the architecture of the plant very clearly. Now, with oaks aside, we can do summer pruning as well, but start young. Look for that central leader. Look for good branch spacing around the main stem, and by all means, leave lower branches on the trunk for as long as you can. When I stand back and look at a young tree, I like to see about 2/3 of the tree in leaves, and then as those branches begin to get larger, then we begin to limb the tree up. But resist the temptation to limb trees up too quickly. But it's really about branch spacing, avoiding double leaders and things like that.
Absolutely. And then we are also, when we're looking at things that may affect a tree's ability to bounce back from a storm, what else are we looking at? What makes a tree more or less susceptible to storm damage?
Right. Some plants just catch more wind. Conifers, for example, will catch a lot of wind. In fact, we might get to this later on in our discussion this morning. But during high wind events, we often see conifers just tip over. They're leaning at a 45-degree angle, sometimes even more. And that's a hard problem to fix. A lot of deciduous trees, leafy trees, will also do that. It seems like the larger the leaves, the more wind they catch, and the more prone they are to damage. And so the obvious question is, well, what if my tree has blown over partially? It's still living, but it's at a weird angle.
Right.
What can I just straighten it up? Can I pull it back straight, stake it, and everything is good? And that's easier said than done. I will say that if it's a young tree, I might be tempted to dig it up and replant it. But on a tree that's been in the ground 4, 5, 6 years, it's awfully hard to do that. And so you can try straightening it up, and that requires some staking to keep it in place. But I've never had much luck doing that. It seems like the tree is forever dependent upon those stakes that we use.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes you've got to make the choice, well, do I just let it go or do I remove it? And trees aren't meant to be leaning at 45-degree angles.
So is that if you were in that situation, you would think about just replacing that tree?
See, the late Dr. Paul Ray used to say, if this were my yard, and I'll channel Dr. Ray here, I'd say the same thing. If this were in my yard, I'd probably remove and start over. I have no patience for plants have to perform in my yard, and if they don't, then they go to the timeout area. But I would be tempted to start over.
And let's talk also about trees that are uprooted or partially uprooted. What do you do in that situation?
Yeah, well, that's kind of what we've just been talking about. I'm trying to think of another example of where this happens. A lot of plants that are container grown, that is, they spent most of their life in a container, their root system is rather confined. And until that root system really branches out into the surrounding soil, those plants are prone to falling over. There's a new church in my neighborhood, and they planted a bunch of arborvitae, and a lot of them blew over because of the restricted root system. So this goes to another topic of proper plant installation. If you're dealing with container-grown plants, do your level best to break up that root system and help it begin to expand into the surrounding soil. Now, that's not going to happen right away, but it's going to give that plant a fighting chance to develop a good root system. So storm damage is a problem. And then as we led the conversation, if you've got big trees in your yard, enlist the support of a certified arborist. These are folks that have credentials. They have passed tests. They're well versed in tree care. They know how to remove branches safely. And I know the price tag can be rather intimidating, but you have no choice.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because usually arborists aren't going to be going door to door, and just owning a chainsaw does not necessarily mean you are a qualified arborist, right? No. Billy Bob showing up on your doorstep. No offense to Billy Bobs out there, but when somebody shows up on your doorstep with a chainsaw and a truck, that doesn't mean they're qualified. I'd be asking questions. Are they a certified arborist? And those terms are intentional. There are qualifications that people earn. They go to continuing education. They study for tests. They're insured. They're bonded. And there's nothing wrong with asking for recommendations or from other folks that have had work done by these people. Absolutely.
But we're fortunate in the state of Iowa. We've got a very strong arborist association in the state. We have a lot of great arborists in the state. And so we're really in pretty good shape here. So that's good news for us. And some communities do require arborists to be licensed, so you'll want to check with your city hall or look this up before you make any choices. Also, if you have the luxury of time, if you can do some cost comparisons, that's always nice. And if I could just come to the defense of arborists, not that they need me to defend them, but when you see the price tag for some of the work, you might be taken aback. But remember, arboriculture is a dangerous profession. It requires a special skill set. It is not easy taking a chainsaw up into the canopy of a tree and doing work. And so the cost might look high, but it's just a price of having big trees in your yard, and that's what it costs to maintain a tree. Absolutely. All right, Jeff, if we come to the decision that a tree is beyond saving and we are going to want to replace it, can we replace it just in the same spot? Like, how do we go about that process? How do we start thinking about it? Yeah, the only problem is one of logistics, I guess, is if, even if you take a large tree down, there's going to be a stump remaining. And even if they grind the stump, there's going to be a lot of roots left over. And so there's nothing wrong with planting in that same general location, but make it easy on yourself. Look for a part of the ground that you can dig a hole in where you're not hammering away at roots. But there is no danger of disease transmission or insect transmission. The only problem is one of getting through the existing woody structure that's left behind.
And I know when we are planting new trees, some species are going to be more susceptible to damage than others. There is a really great list on the ISU Extension website. But do you have any recommendations right now that you would share with people?
Any tree can be a problem if it's not pruned properly. There are the usual suspects, the silver maples, the hackberries, even our friend the autumn blaze maple, if not pruned properly, can be a problem down the road, left to its own devices. But I would suggest that if a silver maple, of all the trees, if a silver maple is pruned properly, it can be structurally sound and live a long, useful life. So I hate to paint with too broad of a brush here. There are no bad trees. Well, there might be a few bad trees, but we won't mention them here this morning. But all trees, if they're pruned properly, can have good, long, useful lives.
All right, so let's kind of review some of what we've talked about. We want to always start with prevention, proper pruning, proper tree care, and doing it with the correct tools, of course, right?
Right. Proper tools. And if I could just interject one more
Please.
thing. If you're thinking about planting trees, don't get a large growing tree too close to the house. I don't like large branches hanging over my house. And so if you've got a tree that's going to grow 40 feet across someday, then come 20 feet away from the foundation. I don't like it. I mean, it's pretty when it happens, but when large limbs are hanging over the house,
absolutely.
That's a problem, or could be a problem.
And I mean, it's so stressful when you do see a large limb that looks like it's just any day now. So, yes.
Right.
And of course, when we're assessing damage, use your best judgment. And when in doubt, consult a professional, ask a professional for help. Never deal with power lines yourself.
Right.
Jeff Iles is a professor of horticulture at Iowa State University. For more gardening information and tips, please subscribe to our Garden Variety newsletter. Find more at ipr.org/garden. I'm Caitlin Troutman. It's Talk of Iowa from IPR News. I'm Caitlin Troutman, in today for Charity Nebbe, and today is Horticulture Day. He speaks for the trees. Jeff Iles, Iowa State University professor of horticulture, is still here. Hi, Jeff.
To be here.
And ISU Extension horticulture specialist Aaron Steil is here. Hello, Aaron.
Good morning.
And we want to hear from you. You can send your gardening questions to Talk of Iowa at iowapublicradio.org or give us a call, 866-780-9100. We have some lines open, 866-780-9100. And Jeff, I have a question for you I'd like to start with. John in Des Moines says, our crabtree has scab. Its canopy gets thinner each year. How long will a mature tree last with scab before it's leafless? And then part two of that, I'm looking for a sycamore tree for a large sunny space. I've read that a London plane tree is a good variety for disease resistance. Is that good for the Des Moines area? So first off, how long will a mature crabtree last with scab before it's leafless?
Are they talking about, maybe I can't ask this question, but are they talking about how many years will it last, dealing with scab? Or
it sounds like it, yeah, before it loses its leaves.
A lot of mature crab apples can live with a apple scab infection year after year without suffering any long-term damage. I mean, it doesn't look good, and it's never a good idea to drop your leaves in July. But I've seen very old trees live with scab, so it's something they can put up with. Other things usually take trees down before apple scab will. So it's a nuisance when the leaves are littering the ground this time of the year, and for that reason, it might be time to think about a replacement. But trees can soldier on for quite a while with an apple scab infection.
So it sounds like it's not going to be dangerous to other trees or anything like that, too.
No, I mean it's not a killer. And if other crab apples are in the area, and if they have resistance to scab, then they're going to be unaffected. So it's more of an aesthetic question. Do you really want to look at that for the next 10 years?
All right. Part two of that, looking for a sycamore tree. Is a London plane tree a good choice for the Des Moines area?
It is. London plane tree is a cross between Oriental plane tree and our native sycamore, and it's thought to have better resistance to a disease called sycamore anthracnose. Of course, our native sycamores get hammered by sycamore anthracnose every spring. And so London plane tree is a nice alternative. There's a selection called Exclamation that's a bit more upright that's become very popular. But yeah, London plane tree is a good choice for our area.
All right. If you have questions, give us a call, 866-780-9100. We have Martha on the line in Red Oak. Hey, Martha, what's your question?
Okay, I have an area of my lawn that is very low. It's right next to the alley, and it collects water during heavy rains. On one corner of it, 2 years ago, I planted some Joe Pye weed, which I personally am in love with, and this year it drowned. 2 years in a row, we didn't have enough water. Can I build I also, of course, love that spot. Can I build a raised bed there? No bottom, but either with, I use pallet boards, tires, whatever. Can I raise the Joe Pye high enough to leave it there without it drowning?
Okay, so will a raised bed help here?
Certainly raising the grade in the area using a raised bed can help get that root system up out of the water. I mean, typically Joe Pye weed is something that tolerates these kinds of conditions pretty well, but especially if it's a kind of a feast or famine situation when it comes to water, it would be difficult for any plant to deal with that. Yes, a raised bed could work in this situation. I would also be interested in trying some other wet-tolerant plants in that area, things like Siberian iris. There's some woody plants like elderberry or buttonbush that do quite well. Buttonbush in particular, there's some really nice cultivars out that are easy to find in garden centers. Butterfly magnet, native shrub. That could be another option in that area.
Martha, you sound excited.
Because I've dedicated my whole yard to butterflies. So.
Amazing.
Yes.
So you've got some good options, it sounds like. Thank you so much for calling. Next.
Oh, no, thank you for answering.
All right, next we'll go to, let's see here, Sherry in Iowa City. Hey, Sherry.
Hi.
What's your question?
I have a little pin oak tree. It's been puttering along just fine for 6 or 7 years, but I swear it's grown 3 feet this year. And it's gotten very tall, and the trunk isn't sturdy enough, and so now the top part of the tree is flopped over. It's very weak and floppy, and I don't know exactly how to address this.
Yeah, so what support? I had an awkward growing phase too. What support do we need here?
Well, oaks will sometimes put on a second flush of growth. In fact, it's happening right now. They'll grow in the spring, and then they'll put on a second flush of growth. And that growth is kind of floppy. There's not a lot of turgidity to the stem. And until the stem develops, it'll look kind of floppy. My tendency would be to leave it alone. Now, you could, I guess, put some bamboo stake up there, but that would require probably getting on a ladder. So I think in this case, I would let well enough alone. The trees have a way of figuring this out on their own, and it's not uncommon. Lindens do the same thing, but oaks this year, well, the growing conditions have been outstanding. We've had plenty of rain. It's been hot, but trees don't care much about that. So I think I would stand. Well, it's a good sign, and apparently your tree, which has been kind of growing slowly for the past couple of years, has finally figured things out, and that has everything to do with the root system. It's probably developed a really nice root system by now. So I don't know. I think I would stand back and just watch this one.
All right, Sherry, thank you so much for calling. Another tree question here. Anne Marie writes, last March, I pruned my 2 dwarf apple trees, cutting off many suckers. By June, they had all regrown, and there are so many suckers. Is it okay to prune them off now? Do I need to wait until March?
No, in fact, we find that if you prune suckers from the base of the tree in midsummer, they don't come back as vigorously. If you prune them in March, they're right back in your face by April and May. So this would be a good time to do it. Try to trim them as low as you can. But there are some rootstocks that just do this to a fault, and I'm afraid it's going to be an annual maintenance event. So test my theory here. Go out and prune them severely now. Prune them all back to the ground now, and see if they come back. They might come back slightly, but they won't come back as vigorously as they will if you prune them in March.
All right, Anne Marie. So you can try and let us know. Give us an update here. Andrea writes, I left town a week ago for just a few days before the big heat. When I returned, my 10-plus-year-old's Korean spice viburnum appeared as if it were dying. I attributed it to heat, gave it some water. Haven't had to water it regularly since its establishment, but over the next several days, the leaves were brown to a crisp, shriveled. What could do this so quickly, so completely? It's in a bed with perennials that are all healthy looking. She says she doesn't use chemicals in her yard or flower bed. It's not near neighbors. She hasn't dug around the roots. So it sounds like she's gone through all the possibilities here.
Caitlin, did she say how old it was?
More than 10 years.
Okay. So you would think the plant would have a pretty good root system by now. But remember, we kind of went from spring to summer overnight.
Pretty quick.
And it was hot and it was windy. And that alone could cause the leaves to brown like this. It's surprising that it happened to the degree that I'm envisioning here. But I don't know what else could happen unless you usher in the specter of herbicide, which we don't want to talk about. But so it sounds environmental. And we've had good rains. If she's going to continue to water, that's good. I don't know if the stems are still supple. That's a good sign. If you can see buds that have formed for next year, that is also a good sign. But I don't know what else could have caused this except for the weird weather we've had this spring. Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, I would think so too. My Korean spice viburnum at home did have some brown leaves. I think it was the dry May, and they're very well established, and so. They didn't brown up enough to fall off, and the plant looks fine, but it was a stressful May for certain species because of how dry it was.
All right. Good luck, Andrea. We have Heidi on the line in Cedar Falls. Hey, Heidi.
Yeah.
Hey, Heidi, are you there?
I am.
Hi, what's your question?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I have 2 maple trees in my yard. I think they have a fungus. They've been in my yard probably about 10 years, maybe a little less. My boyfriend thinks we should just cut them down and start over. I hate to do that because they're just now getting to the point where they're offering some shade. I can't get a hold of anybody, an arborist that could come and see, is this something we can treat? Does it make more sense to cut them down? I'm worried if we just cut them down and start over,
right,
that the problem will just come back because it's not necessarily just the trees, but it's in the soil. I don't know much about plants. So I'm looking for some guidance as to, I've contacted a bunch of arborists and I can't get anybody to reply.
Yeah, it's been a busy spring for these ladies and gentlemen out there doing this work. First off, tell your boyfriend to put the chainsaw down. We're not quite there yet. Can you describe the symptoms more, though? You say you think the tree has a fungus. What, on the foliage, on the trunk? What are you seeing?
So what I'm seeing, the tree that was first affected, now we're like 3 years in, it's got a lot of bare branches. It loses its leaves really early. The leaves get holes in them. They kind of look wilty and curled a lot. I took a picture of the leaves and took it to one of our garden centers here, and they're the ones that suggested it was a fungus. I don't know what they know either.
Okay.
But I don't see anything on the trunk. Go ahead.
So, hey, Heidi, sometimes the best photos you can send, and I encourage you to send them to one of us, is a picture of the entire tree. Stand back and give me a shot of what the entire tree looks like, and then focus on the part of the tree where the trunk meets the ground. Sometimes that's very instructive too. But it'd be good to know, and also a close-up of the leaves so we can tell you what kind of a maple this is. But,
sure.
Those 3 photos would be instructive. I don't like what I hear you saying, but I'm not quite sure what it could be. So maybe if you send us some photos, we could give it a look and have a conversation. But
great.
Maybe it has to be replaced, but maybe not.
Yeah, and if that's what needs to happen, I'm open to that. I don't want to
get ahead of it. Yeah. All right, Heidi, thank you so much. Let's go next to Colette in Waterloo. Hi, Colette.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have planted this year a sweet bay magnolia. During Arbor Day, one of the car dealerships was giving away free trees. It's about 4 foot tall. I followed the Arbor Day planting instructions, and I do believe I have the right environment for it. Number one, it doesn't seem to be doing anything. It hasn't died, but it hasn't grown. And it has just a frond of leaves at the top. It did have a start of a good branch about halfway up, which some little critter during the night bit off. Is it going to be till next year when it really starts to grow? Is it still establishing itself?
Okay, young sweet bay magnolia.
Yeah. Well, these trees, I find that these trees, when they're young, do look a little sparse sometimes. They have these rather large, for the size of the tree, dark green leaves. And especially if in the nursery or the garden center it had been trimmed up quite a bit, it does kind of look a little off-centered that way. I wouldn't expect a lot of growth on top for at least the first year, if not a couple of years after that. That tree is primarily working on getting established its root system into the surrounding soil. And so it's not surprising that it hasn't grown a whole lot on the upper part. I would assume that it is, and all things point to, good planting, all of those things. I would assume that it's working on underground right now. So I would continue to give it good care, water when it's dry. This is a tree that will hold on to its leaves for most, if not the entire winter, which is kind of interesting. Okay. And it does look a little, I think it has an awkward teenage phase when it's growing up. So it will look a little awkward for a couple of years. But once it gets nicely established, and if it's in a relatively protected location, especially part shade, that tree will eventually look really nice. And the flowers on it are wonderful. This beautiful kind of sweet-smelling blooms that come early summer. Yeah. One of my favorite trees, actually. We don't see it a lot here. We're at the very northern end of its range, where it does well. And so don't be surprised if it takes a little bit to get established, but it should work out well for you.
And Colette, I would even go to the extreme. It's not an extreme measure even, but I would protect it from animal predation. I would use chicken wire. I would keep animals away from this thing because, as Aaron says, it's going to take a while to get its act together. And yes, it is an ungainly teenager. We've all been there, but many years ago. But I'd protect it, especially during the winter months. So I'd get the chicken wire on right now.
Okay, I will do that.
All right, Colette, thank you so much for calling. We're coming up on a break pretty soon, but let's try to squeeze in one more question. Pat says, because of some construction, I need to move some daylilies and millennium alliums this week. How should I do that? Aaron?
You could do that. I would try to put them in their final location right away. Good news is that both of these plants are really tough perennials. And so this isn't the ideal time of year to be doing this, but I suspect that they will be okay if you have to do it. If you can wait, I would wait, but construction doesn't always wait for you. So the best course would be to get them from their old location to their new home right away instead of trying to hold on to them in containers or something like that.
Is there would you avoid heat? Would you avoid certain weather? Is there an ideal kind of weather situation for this?
I mean, ideally, we would do this in the spring
Sure.
for both of these plants. And if it's going to be a huge heat wave, you might want to avoid those few days. Water well after you plant them. Check on them frequently. There'll probably be a little bit of foliage dieback because it's this time of year when you're doing this work. But they're tough plants, so I would suspect they'll be okay.
All right, Pat. We just heard from Erin Steil, ISU Extension Horticulture Specialist. We also have Jeff Iles, ISU Professor of Horticulture here. They are here to answer your questions. We need to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more Horticulture Day. Give us a call, 866-780-9100. You can also send your questions to talkofiowa@iowapublicradio.org. I'm Caitlin Troutman. This is Talk of Iowa. We are back with more Talk of Iowa from IPR News. I'm Caitlin Troutman, in today for Charity Nebbe, and it's Horticulture Day. In our Ames studio, we have Jeff Iles, ISU Professor of Horticulture, and ISU Extension Horticulture Specialist. Erin Steil is here. And we want to hear from you. Give us a call, 866-780-9100, or send in your questions to talkofiowa@iowapublicradio.org. And let's go to Becky in Story City. Thanks for waiting, Becky. What's your question?
Hi. We have a big, pretty old maple tree, soft maple in the front yard. And the roots have just gotten so close to the surface, and it's on a bit of a slope, so the dirt washes down the hill. And we need to do something to look better and perhaps protect the tree better. We don't know whether we should try to trim up the branches so there's more sun, or mulch, or what do you think?
Yeah, that's what silver maples do. In fact, a lot of maples will surface root, and if you throw soil on top of them, they just come right back. So I'm a big fan of mulch. Not everybody likes mulch, and you're going to have to mulch to a pretty big degree, but at least that covers them up. It eliminates the need for mowing, and so that would be my first option. If you can plant little hostas, in between the roots, that might be an alternative too, but that can be problematic. So the simplest thing, I think, is just to mulch a very large area below that tree. Limbing it up isn't going to help much. It's not about sun or shade. It's really just what the tree does. They tend to surface root. So
do you think like
mulch,
a ground cover, like a juga or lamium or something like that would go there?
You could try that. You're going to have to pay attention to watering needs because the soil tends to dry out in those areas too. But yeah, you could try that as well.
Okay,
it
but
might
mulch
not be successful.
Probably, huh?
Well, mulch is the simple thing, but I like the plant material alternative. So.
Well, I mean, I've got a lot of ajuga and lamium. I thought I could, just stick some in and see if it goes because it does pretty well in shade. But
yeah.
I wasn't sure if there would be.
You're going to run into. I'm sorry, you're going to run into roots, but that's okay. Just try not to do too much damage to the roots.
All right, Becky, it sounds like you've got a couple of good options there. All right, let's go next to Eric in Dallas Center. Hey, Eric.
Hi there.
Hey, what's your question?
I've got a yard that is just overrun with creeping Charlie. It is a carpet. It is a carpet that's down. Nothing else is coming up through there. I tried some Scott weed and feed on a couple of areas. Seemed to do fairly well, but it also says on the package not to use it around trees. We got lots of trees. I don't want to do. I'd love to do some sort of organic method, but I'm open to doing something.
Oh boy, creeping Charlie.
Yes, we are our favorite weed to hate. This one is likely in this space because, especially if there's a lot of trees in the area, this isn't a place where turfgrass thrives, but creeping Charlie does. And so it's always going to be a little bit of a battle in this area because grass isn't going to outcompete this creeping Charlie. In sunny locations, sometimes it can give it a run for its money, but in the shade, it really can't compete. And so organic control for this is hand pulling and digging, and it can be a little satisfying to pull up these big mats of creeping Charlie, but it takes a lot of persistence. You can use broadleaf herbicides. There are several options out there. The ones that contain the active ingredient triclopyr work particularly well for creeping Charlie, but others do as well. The timing is really helpful here. Doing it in the fall. So applying the herbicide in mid-September and then about 2 to 4 weeks later, which would be into October, As long as it's still green, it can be really effective. But doing it late in the season usually gives you kind of a better outcome. The active ingredient is more thoroughly pulled into the root system that time of year, and so you get a better bang for your buck in that situation. This is not going to be a once and done situation based on what you've described. So this will be something that will take a few years to get ahead of. And then the important thing will be establishing something else in that area so that the creeping Charlie doesn't come back with a vengeance. And so if it's getting 4 hours of sun or so, you can lean in on a shady mix of turf. These usually contain a lot of fine fescues, which can do okay in these areas. They're often marketed as shade grasses. They're really probably more accurately referred to as part shade grasses. If you have more shade, then those will really like less than 4 hours a day. I would look into more either mulch or ground covers or something else that can help kind of outcompete or at least slow down this creeping Charlie. And things like wild ginger can be really nice options. That's native. There are lots of other ground covers out there that can be nice, colorful additions for these areas and can give this plant a run for its money. Although it will likely be something that you're always going to be pulling out of this space. So
oh, boy.
I wish if I had a silver bullet for this, I would be doing this radio program from a tropical island.
You could just press a button, right?
Yeah, but I don't, unfortunately.
Eric, it sounds like you have a new hobby. Good luck. All right, let's go next to Jane. She is calling from Wisconsin. Hi, Jane.
Hi, how are you today?
Great. What's your question?
I have a question about I believe a native viburnum bush. I noticed it actually last spring. It's in a very dense thicket of honeysuckle, bush honeysuckle, and staghorn sumac. And so I don't think I want to try to dig that up or that sort of thing, but what would be a good way to propagate that?
So you could try a stem cutting. We're a little bit late, but taking the terminal ends of one of the shoots, maybe 6 inches long, and rooting it, you might have luck there. I'm trying to think of the best time would be probably June. We're a little bit late now, but you could still try it. In fact, you could take several cuttings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a free bush, right? A free shrub. Never say that.
Exactly.
But you might try that. Always dip the basal end of the cutting in some rooting compound, rooting hormone. You can find that at any garden center, and then try to root it in a well-drained medium. Not in direct sunlight, but you might still get some roots on that. And then once you do develop roots, then of course you transplant that rooted cutting into a container and grow it on for a while before it goes back into the landscape. That might work. Call back and let us know.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
Jane.
you very much. I'll let you know.
Thanks, Jane.
Okay.
Let's go next to Alan in Des Moines. Hi, Alan.
Hello.
Hey.
My call. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. What's your question?
Yes, I have a large stump in the backyard. It's in the corner of the lot. It was damaged during the storm and was taken down to where the two branches had forked off. Anyway, it's about 10 feet tall now, maybe 2-3 feet in diameter. Can't take the rest of it down because of a chain link fence that's kind of wrapped around it. Mm-hmm. Anyway, more to my question. Now it's sprouting arms and legs, branches, and that sort of thing near the top of the stump, and I don't want to keep on, trimming them and that sort of a thing. And I know weed killer is not very helpful, just because I think the branches and leaves or whatever are a little more resistant to that. So,
all right.
Anyway, that's my question. I reached the top of the trunk using a ladder now, and that's of course not the safest. So I want to put an end to this saga this summer if I can.
All right, Jeff, Aaron, any advice for Alan?
So there's a couple of things I would look into. I've lived this situation with a weedy tree that is often sprouting and has a fence or a pole in it. If you can get the tree shorter, It's likely that it's a 4-foot fence, maybe a 6-foot fence, but it certainly is not likely to be a 10-foot fence. That can help a little bit with this maintenance, hopefully. You can continue to cut off these branches as they appear. That is a lot of work. Eventually, unless it's like a mulberry, it will stop. But one of the things that can be fairly effective is cutting off these branches and then stump treating what you cut off. And by doing that kind of religiously with the herbicide, they're usually something that's sold as a brush killer or a poison ivy killer, like those kinds have the right mixture of active ingredients for a woody plant like this. It will still take some persistence though. And the goal here is to just there's a lot of root system here to exhaust, but the goal here is to exhaust this plant. And certain species are going to be really vigorous coming back from this, and others will give it up after maybe a year or so. So it may take some persistence depending on what it is. But apart from that, I'm not sure you have a lot of other options. I wouldn't want to let it grow, though, either, because it would never turn into something worthwhile, right?
I wonder if you could girdle the base of the trunk.
Oh, yes.
And even apply herbicide at the base of the trunk where you've made your girdling cuts.
So, yeah, you could saw in and remove, either cut in at the base probably a couple inches. Yeah. You don't have to cut the whole thing across. You can use herbicide in that after you do that. That's actually a method they use in forestry sometimes.
Yeah. You don't know what kind of a tree it is, though, Alan?
Well, I moved here 20, 30 years ago, and it wasn't here when I moved in. I think it was referred to later as a volunteer thing. Volunteer growth, yes. Never called. I think mulberry. Mulberry is my guess on it. Now, the top of the stump is maybe 2 or 3 feet, 2 feet maybe above the fence, like you presume there. So yeah, I like that idea. At least I can cut that down so it's manageable, however I treat it, and not have to put my ladder up against it, trying to get to the top. I can see a potential copay eventually.
No. And Aaron, it sounds like mulberry is one of the more hard to stop ones from what you said.
This one's I have cut off a mulberry almost 36 inches in diameter, and it sprouts back up. It's wild to remove that much, but with persistence, and it does. It just takes persistence. You can get ahead of it. Herbicides will help with that, and by applying them when you make cuts, you use a lot less herbicide, and you do a lot less potential, or you have a lot less potential of getting nearby things damaged too, and that's always a benefit.
All right, Alan, good luck. Next, we have Christy in Mount Vernon. Hi, Christy.
Hello.
Hey, what's your question?
Well, I took down a small diseased ash in my yard, and when the arborist was here looking at it, I pointed out 2 volunteer basswoods that could be good replacements. And she said, yes, either one of those. But since then, one of them has developed a really strong center stem, so it looks like a bird neck, and then there's leaves at top. So I'm wondering if there's a way I could make that a good replacement tree, or should I go with the multi-branch one beside it?
Christy, I would favor the one with a nice straight single stem. Does it have buds and leaves up and down the stem?
It has some buds, not very many leaves up and down that main stem. It has a couple lower stems that I figured if I went with a central stem, I would trim those off.
Yeah, here's a middle of the road solution. You might try both until you can determine which one is going to be the better tree. You don't want a multi-stem basswood. That goes without saying. But you might want to nurse both along, leave those multi-stems on there for maybe another year, and then begin removing them. The goal is a single stem. That's what you're looking for. But sometimes those secondary stems are going to help feed the what will eventually become the parent plant. But it might be kind of fun to nurse them both along, and then make a decision, down the road a year or two and see what you have. Yeah, I mean, again, they're free trees. You can make a choice. One you'll eventually euthanize, but it's all for science, right? So.
Right. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling, Christy. And we have Bill in Eldridge. Hey, Bill.
Good morning.
Good morning. What's your question?
Well, I have a pair of hard maple trees that I've lived in this home for 28 years. They were here when I moved in. They were pretty small. 23 years ago, I relocated them to where they are now. The gentleman that did it had like a 72-inch or 90-inch tree spade. And the last few years, the tree that's to the south has gotten the growth on the top half of the tree is slowly just diminishing, such to the point that now you can look up at the top of the tree. The one to the north is full and dense and heavy, and if I look at the top of the tree, the one to the south, it's real sparse, very few leaves. I can almost see through the top, branches of the top half of the tree. And I'm just curious as to what's going on with this tree.
Yeah. Bill, it'd be helpful to see a photo, but I'm kind of envisioning what you're describing. You gave a really good description.
Well, I did send an email with photos. I sent an email of the healthy tree and the tree I'm talking about.
Okay.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
We'll check those out. I hate to usher in the specter of stem girdling roots, and I know we've talked about that before on this program, but there are certain tree species, sugar maple being one of them, that will sometimes at the age of about 20 to 25 will develop a root system that begins to encircle the trunk. And this happens quite commonly with most maples, with a lot of maples. And that eventually girdles the trunk and it begins to affect the canopy. The canopy begins to look thin. The canopy begins to die back. Now, there's no way to prove that unless you excavate around the trunk to see if in fact what I'm suggesting is true. But it's become a big problem in the state and, in fact, around the Midwest. So that could be the issue. I don't know what else would cause a tree to slowly decline, really in the prime of life. This is when trees should be growing like gangbusters. So that's just a thought. Google stem girdling roots, and maybe you'll understand what I'm talking about here.
And we will share those photos with you both. That's going to do it for today. Thank you so much to everyone for your calls and emails. Jeff Iles is a professor of horticulture at Iowa State University. Jeff, thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin.
And Aaron Steil is an Iowa State University Extension horticulture specialist. Aaron, thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Talk of Iowa. I'm Caitlin Troutman.